although 94% of our fellowships are awarded to women. So we are predominantly an organisation that help women who've had a career break return back to a research career. Our fellowships are hosted in universities and research institutes, but also very occasionally in companies that have a significant amount of research. The fellowships are sponsored by organisations with an interest in the research that's being undertaken. So the Daphne Jackson Trust is actually a facilitating organisation. We arrange and organise the fellowships, and we match people to sources of sponsorship. Quite often a fellowship will be sponsored jointly by the hosting organisation and by another organisation. So Maria's fellowship was sponsored jointly by the University of Surrey and the Royal Academy of Engineering. Other sponsors that sponsor our fellowships include all of the relevant research councils, many universities, charities, learning societies, industry. So we basically, I spend a lot of my time getting out there and arranging for organisations to sponsor the fellowships. So since Daphne started the fellowships, I think it's now up to about 347 fellowships we've awarded in total. So we are quite expert on dealing with returners and the issues and barriers that they face and the challenges and how to overcome them. What we do is we offer flexible part-time fellowships for researchers who have had a career break. Our basic criteria are that you have to have either a PhD or a minimum of 3 years research experience. The career break has to be for family, caring or health reasons. It has to be at least 2 years, and the fellows at the moment have to be resident in the UK with the right to work in the UK. It's not a quick process. The typical application process takes 9 to 12 months, and it includes development of a research proposal, fine-tuning of that research proposal and retraining program. It involves an interview, which is both assessment and support. It's quite unique in the academic sector. The proposal is peer-reviewed, and the applicant has a chance to respond to those peer review comments, and then it's submitted to our awards assessment panel. Each applicant has a fellowship advisor who is their one person who's their main point of contact at the trust, and they will guide, support, advise and mentor somebody through the application process, through each stage. So our returners, they cover across all areas across STEM, and they have quite a diverse profile. So as I've said, 96% female, 4% men. Career break, we say a minimum of 2 years, but we have dealt with career breaks anything from 2 years to 21 years. I have to say though, a 21-year career break is very rare. The typical length of time that someone has been on a break is probably 5 to 8 years. That's the average length of break that we deal with, but we will consider anyone with a career break of any length of time. Typically a fellow will have 1 or 2 postdocs perhaps. So as you can see from the left-hand pie chart, a quarter of our fellows have 9 years plus experience before taking their career break, but typically it's 3 to 9 years experience in research before a candidate takes a break. So this just gives you a little bit of a snapshot of what happens to fellows after a Daphne Jackson Fellowship. Every 5 years now we do a survey of our former fellows, and we're really delighted with the stats that we have. So obviously 7 out of every 10 of our fellows say that they're in their first choice of career, which is fantastic. 9 out of 10 of our fellows stay long-term in a STEM career, and 9 out of 10 fellows say that it was the fellowship that helped them secure subsequent jobs. In terms of staying in research, the fellowship survey that we last did in 2015, if we look at our former fellows 2 years after their fellowship, 70% roughly, so 7 out of 10 fellows were still in research. If we look a period of time, 5 years after finishing their fellowship, it was still at 52% were still in research. So we're delighted with those statistics, and I think they really show that the Daphne Jackson Fellowships work very well in returning researchers back to a research career. So obviously we feel that our fellows make an impact, and you can see from the stats shown now that as they progress post-fellowship, they become more embedded in their university or research institute. During the fellowship, 75% of fellows will publish. As you can see here, 59% invited to speak at conferences, 78% supervise future researchers. It's a fantastic program that will actually allow people to post-fellowship to really integrate themselves within a research environment. The link at the bottom actually on our website, our website is being redesigned at the moment, so in a couple of weeks we'll have a new website, so that you can find that survey of former fellows, the full report and the full survey on our website. It's still there on our existing website. It's really worth a look. So obviously we are in place to support returners, and that is all we do. We are the only charity in the UK solely dedicated to helping returners. There are other schemes that are run by other organisations. The Wellcome Trust run a research career re-entry fellowship programme. British Heart Foundation have some money that they use for, again, similar career re-entry fellowships, but British Heart Foundation also sponsor Daphne Jackson Fellowships as well. So there are a few organisations that offer fellowships, but we are the only organisation that only deal with returners. So this is all that we do, and we have a lot of experience in helping people. And the slide here shows that 96% of those who completed the survey say it had a beneficial effect on their confidence. And that's one thing I would say in dealing with returners. We notice that when people are starting on their journey back after a career break, their confidence is very low. And the lengthy application process, as well as the fellowship, it's all part of the retraining, and it all helps to improve confidence. So working with the fellowship advisor during the application process starts that whole process of increasing confidence and making sure that when a fellowship is actually awarded, the fellow is ready to start and is really potentially at their best to conduct the fellowship. So if you want to find out more generally about the Trust, I have some contact details here. Contact any of us or ring the Trust office. All of this information is, the contact information is on our website as well. But we're all very happy just if somebody wants to ring up and have a chat, if they're thinking of returning or if they have a friend and they want to find out information to pass on to a friend or colleague, please do contact us. So I'm going to finish here now, and I'm going to pass you on to Maria.
Hello everyone. As you probably guess from my name, I am Spanish, but I went to the United States for my education, so it's been a long time since I've been in touch with the Spanish education system. But in essence, when you become a researcher, went to the PhD. So I got a degree in aerospace engineering from the first a master's in helicopter flight mechanics and aerodynamics, and I really liked it. I stayed for a PhD, and as you can see, the American experience is quite exciting because you actually get to climb on helicopters and do lots of fun things. So at that time, when you're that young, you think that you can do anything, but then as you grow and you have other responsibilities, and you find that mobility and freedom become a bit more restricted. So I graduated I did my PhD defense, which is the equivalent of the Viva, in April 2007. And my then husband and myself, we decided to come back to Europe. And he didn't want to stay and raise families in the States. So we came back and he had a job in London. So by the time I joined him, that is the first restriction on mobility, finding a job within commutable distance. So eventually I found a job, a postdoc at the University of Southampton. And it was all going well. I had a long commute, but it was fine because I had no dependence. I could just go and spend as long as I needed on the train. But eventually you want to start a family. So we moved to Woking, which was closer to Southampton and still within physical to London. And in 2010, I had my first child. My department was very supportive and they encouraged me to take as long as I needed for maternity. And I took about 9 months and I returned later that year. I took my child to the nursery there and it was fine for a while and it just got more difficult as my son grew and started falling asleep in the car. And eventually when my second child was born in 2012, I thought it was too long to commute so far with a small family. So I made a very difficult decision of quitting that job, which unfortunately it was the hardest part of it was there was a permanent research position. It was not on contract. So that was very, very difficult. But I still think it was the right decision. The only problem is then that after a while you want to go back and you find that it's not so easy to find another position again within a commutable distance with a young family. All those issues that made you take that career break don't go away. You still have can you not hear me well? Is it loud enough? I'm getting closer to the laptop now. Hopefully, can you hear me now well? Yes, okay, good. So you still have those dependents, you still have those reasons to stop you from commuting far and from spending all the day out. So it is a personal choice, of course, how much you want to take charge of the children's raising. If you're happy to have a nanny and spend a lot of time away from home, and if you can afford it, which in our salaries is not always possible. But fortunately, with my husband's job, I could afford having a nanny, but I did not want to be that sort of time going home really late at night and not seeing my children. So it was a personal decision to have to leave this job. But then I found going back was very, very difficult. I couldn't find opportunities that were close enough that I could manage, that could maybe work flexibly or part-time. But then, fortunately, I found out about Daphne Jackson and fellowships, and there was an opportunity very close to where I live, exactly here in Guildford at the University of Surrey, and I applied. I was probably just at the 2-year mark, but they told me that at that point the application process is quite long, so by the time it finished, I would probably be well into 3 years, right? So I applied in 2014, and I submitted my initial application, and then I had a phone call, and we had a very nice conversation with my fellowship advisor. And as Katie said, it's an interview, but also it's the beginning of that coaching period of training you and raising the confidence, because I felt at the end of that conversation with my then advisor, I felt really motivated and encouraged, and it had really raised my spirits. And your confidence goes down slowly, and it dips and it dips, and it was a great start. So once you go to the next stage, then you have to work on the proposal and refine it, and it's a period of you get a lot of support from the advisor, and you refine those skills, writing a proposal, doing your literature review, you refine them and you bring them back. And fortunately, I found my fellowship, and I started in November of 2015, and it was a great experience, and I'll get more into the experience in the next slides. And after I finished, I straight away got a job as a teaching fellow at Imperial College, where I have been since then. So the process of applying, as I say, is long. It's something that most people are not aware. It's a very long process, but it's a growth period. You develop skills even during the application, and you get a lot of support. And by the time you finish, you feel that you really own your proposal and you feel really ready. You refined it. You really look at all the details. You know by then that it's realistic and that it's something you can achieve. And at first, well, you didn't feel that you could achieve this, but be aware that it's not something that's going to start within 3 months. In my case, it was over a year. And also during that entire period, we have the support from a fellowship advisor, which is amazing because they give you great feedback on the proposal, but also not just on the research side, on the personal side of it. What are your goals? What do you want to do in your activity? What are your prospects? You have to plan for the future, and that has to be reflected in your proposal as well. So during all that period, you have a major support from the fellowship advisor. I think one has to be very realistic as well in terms of the application about what you can achieve within this fellowship, because effectively, as it's part-time, it really is 1 year. So you start with these great ambitions of what you want to achieve, but you have to remember that being part-time is equivalent to a year worth of work. But I think in most cases, people are surprised about how much we fellows in this 2-year pipeline achieve in our projects, because we really are very motivated by having come back, and we really want to see ourselves. And I find that when I've seen all the projects in the companies of all the other fellows, it's quite amazing what they have achieved as well in such a short period. Now, I will have to say that it's very important that you choose your supervisor carefully. You want somebody who's going to help you during the application process, but also that you're aware that they're going to help you through during and after your fellowship. In my case, I chose somebody I knew that found that I could work well with him because I had a skill that he could put together with his other project, but it was not in a field that I was an expert on at all. So during the fellowship, our relationship was very good. It was silly, but I mean is that I'm not an expert in that field, so he could not give me an opportunity to follow up. He could not support me following up this fellowship in my research because I was not in any condition to apply for fellowships in that area yet. So you have to choose the supervisor and the research they do very carefully, I think. So I think it's a period where you have to do some reflection before you actually put on the formal proposal. And it's something that probably rushed into, and I recommend that people take a bit more thought into what they're going to do afterwards, because you have to be, how is this going to be help me in the future? Is this a realistic plan? Is this going to lead me to a career after my fellowship? And I think I was to some extent, but perhaps not so much in the actual research development of this project in the future for me. I thought it would open me doors, definitely, but towards the end of my fellowship, I did consider that perhaps I did not have a future within this particular research field. So I wish I had seen that before. So I would recommend that people are strategic when they're writing their proposals. So definitely, it's been incredibly beneficial having this fellowship. The support of the advisors through the period is amazing. I was particularly very, very fortunate because I was just in the next building, so I could meet my advisors in person, and we could have a coffee and to cope with the issues and the difficulties and to get that support, to continue raising that confidence. It's been amazing, I have to say. But they've always taken on you, they always making sure you're fine. And in my case, I could do this in person, but everybody has this amazing support from the advisor. Another benefit is the fact that it's part-time, so you can really slow your way into work without a great disturbance to your family commitments, and you can slowly figure things out, and you can probably find the right support to help you put in more hours in the future. But if at the same time the children grow and it goes at the reason for their career break, so it becomes easier. So going back part-time is a great benefit, even though it might not be financially amazing, but it does ease your way into work, and I think that's great. Another advantage of the Daphne Jackson Fellowships is that you can change fields slightly. It doesn't have to be exactly the same thing you're doing, and that's actually good because perhaps what you're doing was there's no follow-up for you. That might be the reason why you had a career break. Maybe it was not leading you anywhere. Maybe there's no job opportunities that you couldn't go back for such a long time. So having the possibility of switching slightly the career paths and maybe trying to concentrate on something else might open up more job opportunities in the future. So that's fantastic. Another fantastic benefit is that you can tailor custom-made training for them that's going to benefit you and the things you need. So if you're in a lab, you can learn more analysis and machinery, but if you are a computer person and stuff, you can learn more software, but you can also do lots of training to coach you in other ways. And in my case, one of the big ones we did was Springboard, which does help you motivate, find your skills and values and grow your confidence. But the one that was really critical for me was being part of the learning and teaching in higher education training, because thanks to that I managed to obtain a teaching position at Ribera College. So the fact that you can choose the training you want and you are encouraged to do a lot of training is really, really critical to the success of the fellowships. And there are a number of training courses that all the career returns have to take, and they address those issues that we have, confidence and having professional skills and learning about publishing and things that might have put us back in our careers. So it addresses all those issues, and towards the end, I feel that you are in a much, much better position than you did in the end. If I have to warn people about expectations, I would have to say mainly that you have to be very aware of where you were before you had a career break. It's not going to be a quantum leap. If you had not published much, like in my case, it's not going to change a lot. So you have to be very conscious that you will go back to more or less where you were. It's not going to land you a lectureship straight away. Unless you were very close to the lectureship, you have lots of published work, and then you might get closer. But you have to be very realistic and very conscious. It's not a quantum leap, definitely. And having a career break does have an impact. Fortunately, some fellowships nowadays, they are starting to account for those years on break when they count the number of years post-PhD. So if the limit is 7 years post-PhD to apply for a fellowship, some of them are starting to now deduct if you have a career break for maternity or other reasons, but that's still not always the case. And definitely it does account for a break in productivity, a break in the publishing, and a lot of people still don't account for that. I've been involved in Athena's one, and in part of the process is to make sure that those things are included, that when you interview people, you're aware if you have a career break. But I think we're still quite far away from having this truly embedded everywhere. And I think it's also good to consider doing something during your career break that you can sell, attend a conference or be a guest lecturer somewhere, or invite yourself to a seminar. Try to do something that keeps you in, because not only it's good for your own well-being, but also I think it fills that gap in the meantime. And also consider that when you come back, it might have a salary drop because you've been away, and even if you were in a much higher situation in the salary ladder, for instance, before you started your break, it will probably have an impact as well, and you might have to step down a few months. So in my opinion, if I can give some humble advice, is that that yes, you can have a career break, consider it if you want it, but I mean, you have to be realistic. You might have a setback professionally, but it's not impossible. And I think if you choose your project and advisor carefully, you can actually open lots of doors in the future. But probably my most important bit of advice is that you have to believe in your own definition of success, not what other people consider success. If you start like thinking you want to be a professor, then you have to make the decisions carefully. But if that is not your own definition of success, if you want to have a research career, if you want to work in a certain field, but part of your definition of success is also having a family, then let that be your own definition of success. Don't try to measure yourself by what others are doing with their careers and what other people think is success, because they might not have other things that you have in your life that are important to you, and they might have made other sacrifices along the way. And I think once you realize what you want, and of course you have to remember that you can't have everything, but once you define your own definition of success, let that be your drive and not what other people think we should be doing. And I think that's all I wanted to say, and I'm very happy to answer lots of questions about my choices and my experience, and I'm sure Katie also wants to answer questions about the fellowship itself. If you have any, we're looking at the chat window to see if you have any questions.
Thank you, Maria and Katie. Guys, if you have any question now, it's time to ask. You can type them in the chat box or the question box that you have in the control panel of GoToWebinar.
So the question is, how did I deal with self-confidence after having a career break? Well, at first it's very low, as I said, and little by little it starts going back when you see people who actually believe in you and support you through the application and the proposal. That starts to help. And then I think the training that we have also leads us to having increased self-confidence. And sometimes it's one of the problems with women mostly with imposter syndrome. We tend to downplay your own successes, and having people around you actually cheering you on and highlighting your successes brings your confidence back, and slowly you feel more capable of actually completing not just this project, but finding a job and going back and really having a career.
It's something that we notice across all our fellows. It doesn't matter how much of a career somebody had before their break. The one thing, being out of the workplace for a significant period of time means that everybody has issues with confidence. And that's one of the reasons why one of the training courses that is compulsory for Daphne Jackson Fellows to complete during their fellowship is a confidence course. And what we have found is that fellows get a lot of support from one another. There's a lot of peer support. Often they form informal groups if they're in the same geographical area, and then they support one another. And it's all of those things that help to increase people's self-confidence. The fellowship advisors will really try and boost people's confidence if they notice that, you know, they're really not as confident as they should be. So, but it's very rewarding from the point of view of us here at the Trust to see how much people grow in confidence from the point that they first contact us to the point that Maria's at now, where she's completed her fellowship and she's into the next stage of her career.
I think I was very fortunate that my 2-year fellowship was wrapped with 2 conferences of the Daphne Jackson Trust, which is actually every 2 years. It was just before I started and right after I finished. And in my first conference, when I was about to start and my confidence was still quite low, I was chatting with the other fellows, and I remember particularly one conversation with one of the other fellows who was nearly finishing, and how amazing it was to see what she had done, and she really encouraged me. She was so supportive. And 2 years later, I was able to do that with the new fellows, with the people starting. I felt I had achieved that point, and I could actually do the same for others because I could see their potential as well. And I could see that how long it had taken me there to get there. But definitely, it's amazing the peer support. So the question is, from a more personal point of view, how did you feel during the career break? This is one of my fears. I will not feel happy when not working. It is a bit scary. Well, it's quite scary, to be honest. It's very scary when months go by and you don't find opportunities that you can actually handle, your family, for instance, and work, and that fear of not being able to go back. I did several things. I wrote a paper for a conference it's an international conference, but it happened to be the UK in the field that I did my PhD. So writing that paper was very useful for me to just keep those skills alive and fresh, to go back and meet those people. They could see me, I'm still alive, and I was not perhaps ready to take any of those jobs because geographically I couldn't. But that was very good for stay in touch, and actually I think it did help me a lot. And I also did a couple of guest lectures, and doing those things kept me in the field enough to keep me motivated and not completely lose faith. But it is quite scary, and not knowing when you're going to go back, what opportunity is going to arise that will allow you to go back. So don't be afraid, because the reasons why you are taking a career break are very rewarding too. But I think the best way is to stay in touch and do little things that will keep you in the field.
Can I just answer that as well? I think I would say that from dealing with a lot of the fellows that we have, for a lot of them, and I'm talking now about women who have children, and that's the reason they have a break. Sometimes they are quite stressed and unhappy when they're trying to manage working full-time and having children. And the fact that they know they can take a complete break for a few years to be with their children and then return with a Daphne Jackson Fellowship means that actually they feel a lot happier because they know that they can take a complete break and be with their family, but then they can return. There's a way that they can return. So I think for a lot of the people that we deal with, maybe they have one child, a little bit like Maria, they have one child and they have a maternity break and they return and they can manage just about with one child. It's when they have subsequent children, when they have the second child or the third child, everything gets too stressful, it gets too complicated, too expensive, and that's quite often when fellows decide that they want to take a complete break, until maybe the children have got a little bit older and they're at school, and that's when they start thinking about returning. So I mean, everybody is individual though. Some people will be very happy to have a break away completely. Other people want to continue and work and have a family, and they can manage that. So, but the one thing about our fellowships is that they're all unique and they're all individually tailored. So, you know, we deal with a whole range of people and situations. So yeah, typically it's around 4 to 6% of men, both in our application process and with the fellowships. What we noticed back in, it was around 2003, we noticed that we were getting some applications from men, and they met all of our criteria, because when the Daphne Jackson Trust was set up, it was intended to be just for women. And we noticed that they met all of the criteria, apart from the fact that they were a man, not a woman. So we approached the Charity Commission and said we need to expand our remit to include men, and that was fine. And we have a small but steady number of applications from men, and I think really we try and do as much as we can to promote the fact that we are an independent returners organisation for men and women. I think it will still be the case that far more women take career breaks than men, although we do have some men who have taken the break to look after children. But because we deal with, our criteria are family, caring and health reasons. So sometimes men will have to take a career break because they have ill health, or because they're looking after elderly relatives, or for other reasons. So we try and do all we can to promote our male fellows and to promote the fact that whether you're a man or a woman, it's quite acceptable to take a career break. I think as society changes and couples are in more equal relationships in terms of careers and jobs, we might find that more men do take a break to look after family, children as they grow up. So I think, let's look at the question again. Percentage of men. So I mean, in terms of what's needed to promote equity and career breaks, we do all we can to promote our male fellows and to say that we are here for both men and women if they take a career break, I think.
Okay. Any more questions?
Can I just
No?
say, if anyone has questions afterwards that they think of, please do contact us. We'd be very happy to answer any questions afterwards if anyone thinks of anything after the webinar has finished.
Okay, and I also would like to add that if you guys want to know a little bit more about what the Daphne Jackson Trust and how they make a difference, there is a super nice, beautiful YouTube video where you can see it there. We will post it as well in our social networks if you want to see it. Right, so thank you very much. It has been a really informative and interesting talk. And thank you as well for all the attendees.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Have a good day.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.